Hi, I'm Peter J. Ray. Welcome. Today's topic is John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, 1944, Part 7. This was originally published as a Zook Family Memories Collection, or ZFMC number 18, on March 29th, 1989. And this is, we stopped last time, John S. Ray and his friend Bruce Partridge were in Los Angeles, California. And they hitchhiked out west. They were taking a trip, and today's passage, it's going to be about involving their trip back from Los Angeles, California, to Sandusky, Ohio. July 13th, 1944. Didn't get up until noon today for obvious reasons. Bruce Partridge and I took the trolley over to Long Beach this afternoon, and we found our way out to Great-Grandmother Ray's. My card hadn't gotten there yet for some reason. My two great aunts, Nell and Em, seemed to be very nice old ladies. We only stayed there for an hour or so. This evening we had a picnic lunch in the backyard, very pleasant. The cook seemed to have all of the nice little extra things that go with having money. After supper we got busy and pulled down passion vines, quite a few of them. We played records until about 1 o'clock and are very ready for bed now. July 14th, 1944. Slept late again this morning. This afternoon we went out to Santa Monica Beach via the La Brea tar pits. Very interesting history. The ocean was quite cold and dirty but fun. After dinner we went to a double feature. The second picture, Between Two Worlds, was a very different picture and moved me deeply. Some real food for thought. July 15th. Got up at 7 o'clock this morning and together wrote 30 postcards before leaving about 10. The cooks have really been wonderful to us. I tried to call Tom Zook before leaving but couldn't reach him. We caught our first bus in Los Angeles about 11 o'clock a.m. and finally got out of town and into the San Fernando Valley. The country through there and across the ridge was really beautiful. The whole works looks as if it had been done very carefully in an oil picture. The trip through the San Joaquin Valley was very hot. It is a flat stretch and straight as a string. We had a fairly long ride with a bombardier. While with him, we had our fourth flat tire so far. He brought us to Merced, where we turned off to Yosemite. We managed to get as far as Mariposa, California. After looking all over town, we finally decided to sleep on the iron benches by the courthouse. We dressed as warmly as possible, but by 1 o'clock a.m., it had gotten so cold that we had to look for another place. A big car looked comfortable and was unlocked, so here we are. We came 310 miles today. July 16th. Woke up about 6 a.m., washed, ate, and hit the road. It took about an hour to get our lift to the park, during which time I slept on a wooden bench. The country leading into Yosemite is very beautiful. Passing into Yosemite, we saw the Bridal Veil Falls. Beautiful. We got out at the government station and checked with the rangers about where to stay and what to see. We walked back to Yosemite Lodge, rented a tent, and got settled. All of the bicycles were rented, so we went swimming. From the pool, you can see Yosemite Falls, a really inspiring sight. The first falls is over 1,600 feet. And the second one 320 feet. We ate supper in the cafeteria and caught a ride over to Curry Camp, where we saw the fire fall, another unusual sight. We caught another ride back with an Oberlin graduate. 5 people here in the park have come up and talked to us because of our Oberlin t-shirts. I almost forgot, we saw some colored movies after supper on a ride from Lake Tahoe to Yosemite, and we came 45 miles. July 17th. Managed to wake up in time this morning to rent some bicycles. We took a 4-hour bike ride up to Mirror Lake and then walked several miles up the trail from there. The country is just as the Indians left it. Many pines, very tall pines, and lots of granite boulders. However, we haven't seen any bears yet. New birds so far include the yellow-headed blackbird, blue-fronted jay, spotted towhee, and Brewer's blackbird. This afternoon we went swimming again after having had another delicious milkshake. We're getting to know the girls at the fountain. We also had quite a bit of fun at the pool with 2 girls. We had a date with them for 9:30 tonight at the dance over at Curry Camp. At dinner, we met a Marine captain and his young wife, and were with them 2 hours. They were two fine people and still very much in love. A very enjoyable time. We bought our last shake and walked over to Curry. We saw the fire fall on the way over. We couldn't get in the dance because we only had on short-sleeved sports shirts. Very disappointing. What's more, we couldn't find our women. So we walked back, and here we are. Too bad, but that's the way it goes. July 18th. We hit the road this morning about 9 o'clock a.m. after checking out. The past 2 days at Yosemite were certainly a high spot of our jaunt. Our first ride took us to El Portal, where we were stuck until we drafted a just-married couple into taking us into Merced, where she built. A very nice middle-aged couple brought us to Oakland just in time to grab a car going over to San Francisco. We passed over the San Francisco Bay Bridge on this ride, which is really a long bridge. We were completely lost when we got off the car, but we found a little hole in the wall and ate something. Then we began looking for a room. We finally found a dingy little stinky garret room in a waterfront cool hotel for $1.25 each. The bed is harder than all hell, and there's all of one John for the whole deck. Well, anyhow, we're inside, and we came 210 miles. July 19th. Some lad in the next room coughed at least 6 hours last night, so I'm feeling much rested. We began shining about 8 o'clock a.m. and managed to find a bus out of San Francisco for 35 cents over to San Rafael. We passed over the Golden Gate Bridge, one of the most awesome sights of the jaunt on the way. From the bridge you can see the gray outline of good old Alcatraz. A very well spent 35 cents. All day we've been hearing about the terrific explosion off Port Chicago, which killed nearly 400 men. A hell of a mess. Our luck was just average until a rancher with whom we were riding blew a tire. He didn't need help with the tire, so we thumbed from there with lady luck over us. The first car picked us up for about 80 miles. The men in the car were lumbermen, of which a Mr. Rounds of Wichita was the wealthy boss. He said to look him up in Rockport, California, if we ever need work. They were all three swell guys, Mr. Rounds in particular. He bought us each a 3-course dinner, the most delicious one we've had for a while. We were going along the Redwood Highway all this time, except for the dinner, so the men put down the top of the convertible so that we could see the big trees. They are absolutely majestic and real forest giants. We were stuck in Scotia until nearly midnight when we got a lift over to Eureka. We got a very nice little room in a motel, the last one again, and are really ready for bed. We came 300 miles today. July 20th. It was cold as all outdoors this morning, so we put on all of our warm clothes, sweatshirt, towel, etc. The rides came very slowly, but we certainly met some interesting people. Besides being cold this morning, a lovely fog had come in from the ocean, so while we were near the coast, we couldn't see hardly at all. To get back to the people, one was a wealthy, filthy old cuss who raises Easter lilies and catches 60-pound salmon. Another was a pretty blonde driving an army car who runs out and cuffs the AWOL lads, and still another was a truck driver who went like hell through the hairpin turns and curves in the mountains, but was good at it. This country is filled to the brim with large forests and lumber mills from Northern California on up. Everything is very spread out and lonely. We were stranded in Canyonville, Oregon, about 7 o'clock for the night. Bruce called home and found that everything is still all right. The hotel here is so crummy that we looked for a car. We found a Ford close to a house and crawled in for the night. We came 210 miles again. July 21st. We had to change cars about 4 o'clock a.m. because of the cold. It was really chilly. We ate and hit the road about 6:45. The rides didn't rush today, but again we met some interesting people. One fellow is the typical lumberman who can't get enough gas and tires and raises particular hell with his ration board about it. It looks like Harry Truman is going to knock off Wallace for the Democratic vice presidential nomination. More trees and lumber mills today. The last fellow was very nice and pointed out the interesting things along the way, e.g. vineyards of of hops, Mount Hood, and several paper mills. We got the last cabin again in another motel and are all set just outside of Portland. We also saw the new and beautiful Capitol at Salem, Oregon. This evening we were busy doing our washing, catching up on our journals, taking baths, and shaving. We came 230 miles. July 22nd. We hit the road about 9:30 this morning. Our first lift was with a fellow who had hit two little kids with his pickup truck the night before. It hadn't been his fault at all, but he was still feeling mighty low. We got another ride on a flat rack which already had 4 other hitchhikers. One was an old fellow who wanted to get to Chicago, had only 12 cents and was scared to death. While on this truck we passed through some really beautiful country. We followed the Columbia River all the way. It's quite wide and very fast. It's surrounded by fir-covered mountains with enormous rocks and small tunnels all over the place. We saw several waterfalls on the way also. The state of Washington is just across the river, but we won't get into it. We got stuck in the Dalles for 4 hours to the heat of the day. Strangely enough, the rolling desert country begins again outside this town. We finally got away from the place. We were stranded again for 4 hours out in the desert by a filling station. Well, there we realized that we each have $25 left, 2,500 miles to go, and 10 days in which to get home. This makes it a strict $2.50 deal per day. About 11 o'clock we got a lift with a soldier going to Spokane. Just our luck, because we had just decided to skip Spokane because of lack of time. So we only came as far as Umatilla with him. We couldn't arouse the guy who owned the town's motel, so we just walked into one, since several were vacant and unlocked. We're going to sleep in the back bedroom so that we have a fighting chance of getting out in the morning without being caught. We came 195 miles today. July 23rd. Managed to leave this morning without getting tagged and hit the road about 9 o'clock. We only got 4 rides all day. The first one was with a couple with some very unusual tales. You remember the big explosion off Port Chicago, which killed nearly 400 and injured 500 more? This woman said that some of the bombs from the place in which she worked were on the 2 ships. She also said that one of those bombs had acted damn funny at the plant. Funny noises and blue spurts of flame, and she had reported it. However, her boss had just laughed at her and had not called an inspector to look at the bomb. So the bomb, a 1,000-pound one, was shipped out. I wonder. While riding with the second fellow, we passed over Cabbage Hill, from which you can see for miles. The country was stretched out in a beautiful patchwork quilt effect. Really beautiful. While with this man, we got the latest war news. Germany seems to be breaking up internally. Fine news. After a long wait in Union, we got a ride here to Caldwell, Idaho, with 2 girls in a pickup truck with a load of tomatoes. Very interesting trip. One was a college girl. We had a fine old time. About 25 plus miles out of Caldwell, a recap came off, so Bruce and I changed another tire. Our t-shirts were really filthy from leaning against the seat for so long. The girls dropped us at the local swimming pool, saying they would be back when they got cleaned up. The water was warm and the swim delightful, but the girls didn't come back. We tried to call, but the phone had been disconnected. After getting a room and eating, we walked out to Jin's house, but no one was there. Good exercise anyway. We came 260 miles. July 24th. Our $1 per person hotel room last night was very comfortable. We brought our journals up to date and wrote some postcards before leaving, so we didn't hit the road until 10 o'clock a.m. We didn't have any trouble at all getting to Boise, Idaho, but we had about 3 hours trouble getting away. The state capitol is very dirty looking, not at all like the new white marble one in Oregon. We left Boise with 2 Air Corps men who were good Joes. The 4 of us consumed a gallon of beer going 40 miles in an old Model A. One of the boys had the Distinguished Flying Cross and the Air Medal with 10 clusters. We pulled into Twin Springs about 9 o'clock and wolfed for a while. Managed to check a red convertible. Bruce had a good time, but I thought it was duller than hell. The country here is just like it was in Nevada and Arizona, only the sagebrush is healthier. Wide open spaces. Everything is irrigated and little ditches are running around all over the place. This is the land of ranches, rodeos, potatoes, and wheat. Per usual, we found our $1 hotel. Hitchhiking is getting tougher. We came 175 miles. July 25th. The rides came along nicely today, although we didn't hit the road until 11 o'clock a.m. The road went along the beautiful Snake River and past the famous Masker Rocks. In Pocatello, we had quite a wait. During this time, a little boy who lived close to where we were hitching burned down a neighbor's barn and got the daylights knocked out of him by his mother. Also, an MP stopped and asked us for identification. He thought we were possibly 2 of the 3 escaped prisoners from the local guardhouse. We finally left the joint with a salesman who took us to the other side of Ogden, Utah. He had a radiator that was really rusty. We managed to get over as far as Echo, Utah, and looked for a room. We couldn't wake the lady who owned the cabin, so we just went into one. Soon she came over and gave us hell, but I talked to her a while and she's letting us stay. I hope we can keep on doing as well as we did today. We came 280 miles. July 26th. Didn't wake up until 10:30 and didn't get a lift out of Echo until about 1. A young shavetail took us over into Evanston, Wyoming. What a town and what a state. From now on, Wyoming is the gosh darn state for me. We hitched 4 hours without a lift and pulled the worst boner of the trip there. We switched corners just shortly before a Denver ride came along. T.A., a sailor who had planted himself in front of us just 20 minutes before, got it. We got disgusted and decided to hop a freight train. We dropped over to the freight yards and got into a boxcar with an old bum. A 16-year-old, very dirty young fellow, also got aboard. The old boy was half drunk and the young kid hadn't eaten or slept for 2 days. The kid took charge and told us what he knew about hopping freight trains. The old man lit a candle and we were off. During one stop, the brakeman came back and told us it would be too bad if we were caught with any money. The old man gave us $35, which we split and then tied to our respective gonads for safekeeping. The kid and the old man argued quite a bit, and the kid was going to roll the old boy if he got the chance. We finally got to Green River and dropped off without getting nailed. We went downtown for a bite to eat and then went back to the yards. We dodged supposed bulls for an hour or so, and then Bruce and I decided to get a room. However, all 4 of us got a lift into Rock Springs. We got a nice hotel room, took good baths, boy were we dirty, and are just slightly dead. It's 2 o'clock a.m. now. We came 145 miles. July 27th. We hit the road about 11 o'clock again. About 1 o'clock, 2 drunks took us out to a little crossroads in the middle of nowhere, 20 miles from nowhere, meaning Rock Springs. We were stranded in the desert. We found an old water pump so we didn't die of thirst. About 3:30 we got a lift back into Rock Springs on a caboose because you couldn't go either way hitching. We finally ate again and hopped another freight train to Rawlins without too much trouble. It's surprising how friendly the brakemen, engineers, etc. are. Good Joes. We found a very homey place for $1 apiece. Again, we had to scrape off the dirt. At least we're still on schedule. Our schedule says that we have to make 300 miles a day now for the next 5 days. Hope we make it. We came 110 miles. July 28, 1944. We were slightly dead after yesterday, so we didn't get up too early. We ate and hit the freight yards about noon. We, that's too many we's, picked up our side door Pullman reservation and rode to Laramie. On the way, the train got a hot box, and while stopped, we gave a little Mexican boy a nickel for some water. I don't think he knew for sure what the nickel was. The section foreman we talked to had only 1 man in his crew instead of 10. The Second World War again. By the way, we are knocking the socks off the Germans and the Japanese now. The Russians are pushing through to Warsaw in a hurry. Really fine news. We cleaned up enough to get into a third-class restaurant and ate. Then we ran into a very friendly brakeman who helped us out. We caught a ride on some flat cars which had army trucks on them. First we laid down beneath the truck but got up behind the cab to get more comfortable. After about 2 hours of that, one of the damn funniest, pardon me, things happened I've ever seen. Bruce and I were getting very cold all this time and were putting on all of our clothes. We finally got down to our long underwear. I put mine on and Bruce was just putting his on when we went through a tunnel. The smoke was thick and there was poor old Partridge trying to put on his longies. I'll never forget that sight. Bruce finally got the wire off the door and we got into the cab. It wasn't too bad, so we decided to stay on through to Cheyenne and North Platte. We were taking a large chance because the Cheyenne yard was supposed to be full of detectives. However, we kept low and weren't seen, and after one of the longest nights I have ever spent, got safely into North Platte. We were filthy as vermin. Luckily, we found a small creek about 6 inches deep with a sand bottom, so we hopped in and scrubbed ourselves with sand until Bruce remembered my soap. Then we got a fairly decent bath and went into North Platte, ate, and called Carolyn Scholand. We made it over to Gothenburg easily. Just as a convention, I'll end the day here. We came 415 miles today. July 29th. Carolyn has been having a real tough old time since we left. 5 of her boyfriends in Gothenburg have been killed in the service since we were there last. We told her all about the trip and ate quite a quantity. We didn't stay very long because her parents weren't there. Another we, managed to get to Grand Island with an old fellow who is a good guy. We all 3 got a room in a hotel here and are slightly tired. In fact, day it again. And we came 100 miles. July 30th. About 8 o'clock this morning we fell out of bed and hit the road right away and came as far as Fremont with him. We rode into Omaha without any trouble and took a trolley to the eastern edge of Council Bluffs, Iowa. About 7:30 we pulled into Des Moines, Iowa, and I called Sally. We went right out to the Needhams and they greeted us with open arms. We told them all about the trip, took a bath, ate, and have been having a fine old time talking with the girls. Fine folks. We came 295 miles. July 31st. Today was Ruth Mary's day off, so the girls asked us to stay over a day, which we were both more than willing to do. We had a late breakfast and went swimming shortly after in a pool with very strange construction. We all had a good old time. After getting back, we cleaned up, ate, talked some more, and went to the show. It was a double feature, and both shows were very good. After the show, we finally found our way to the Talleyrand Club. A 3-piece colored band was playing in a dark little second-floor room, and the beer was terrible, but we had a swell time. We took the 2 o'clock bus back, had something to eat, and it's nearly 3 now. What a fine day. August 1st. At 7 o'clock a.m., we propped our eyes open, ate breakfast, and thanked the Needhams and hit the road about 11. It has been looking like rain all day, but none came down on us. We finally left Des Moines in a dump truck. In the truck. We got to the outskirts of Davenport about 6 o'clock p.m. and thought we were going to get stuck. However, a truck hauling stock to Chicago picked us up. What a ride. 3 trucks were trying to stick together, and one of them was being driven by a young fellow who didn't know too much about it. His tractor broke down completely once. Then just the 2 trucks were left, and Bruce and I separated one to a truck. He had to stay awake to keep his driver awake, but my driver was rested up, so I dropped off about half the time. The 2 trucks kept losing and finding each other all night. We finally pulled into Chicago this morning about 6 a.m. Incidentally, I damn near froze last night until my driver finally closed a few things. Again, for convention, I'll end the day here. We came 350 miles. August 2nd. We rode buses, streetcars, etc. down to South Chicago, over to Hammond, Gary, East Gary, and finally hit the road 3.5 hours later just outside of Hobart. The road was being resurfaced and we were really in a mess. It was almost impossible to get a ride. We moved like snails. We'd get off one bad stretch only to get another. Very discouraging. About 8:30 p.m. we were dropped out here in the middle of nowhere, about 16 miles east of LaGrange, Indiana. I called Mother from the filling station across the way to tell her we might be a couple days late. There's nothing else in this place except for the filling station. We couldn't catch a ride, so we're getting ready to bed down here in this field for the night. We came 175 miles. August 3rd. After a splendid night's sleep amidst the dew and mosquitoes, we hit the road early. We don't have mosquito bites anywhere except on our hands, because we had our pants stuffed down in our socks and pajamas around our heads. We are very glad today is over, because between my 3-day beard and our filthy clothes, we had one hell of a time getting rides. We had one 70-mile ride with a guy who was hauling 23 tons of steel and really moved slowly. We were with him for 4 hours. However, he was a good Joe and bought us beer and hamburgers at one place because we were very short on dough. There was a series of small towns on the other side of Fremont which we thought we'd never get past. I put my last dime in a slot machine in Perrysburg and got $1.40 on plums, so I got to eat again. We finally got to Sandusky, Ohio about 9:20 p.m. I've been put in 1A again and will go for my physical on August 12th. It's really fine to be home and see the folks again. Bruce is in 1A with nothing definite yet. There are also 2 letters from Duffer, Tony, and Bill Seaman. It's been a really wonderful trip, and I wouldn't trade the experience for anything. We came 135 miles today. The trip lasted 36 days, 26 of which were actually on the road. We covered 6,687 miles with an average of 257 miles per traveling day. We helped change 6 tires and ended up with 1 cent. Finis. To be continued. We have a few comments on this ZFMC. The first is from John S. Ray, the author. Quote, "My, oh my, what an adventure. How fortunate that our parents were willing to let us make the trip. Bruce Partridge was a fine companion. How lucky we were not to meet with disaster. Nothing like seeing the USA. How wonderful our Oberlin friends were when we visited them. We were really living life to the full and then some. Thank you, Mr. Editor, for bringing back the memories. John S. Ray, Cleveland, Ohio." And the second comment is from Alice Garcia Ray. Quote, "I have received the copy of ZFMC Volume 18. Maraming salamat, kaibigan. Your front cover was very attractive, and you certainly have a very handsome dad. His college life was very interesting, full of adventure and excitement. Alice G. Garcia, Quezon City, Philippines." And the next is from Augusta Smallshaw, my mother's mother, my grandmother. Quote, "Oh, I must tell you how very much I enjoyed reading your dad's journal about his time in Oberlin, and then his hitchhiking trip with Bruce Partridge to the West Coast. I started reading it right after the late night news and didn't stop until I finished it. I really lived in it and felt like I had taken the trip myself. Hitchhiking in those days was better than now, I am sure. Augusta Smallshaw, Regina, Canada. Regina, Saskatchewan, Canada." So that's our today's presentation of John S. Ray's Oberlin College Diary, the summer of 1944, and the part about traveling back from Los Angeles, California to Sandusky, Ohio. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. God bless you. Take care, and I'll see you next time.